Story 1, The Demon in U Minh Upper National Park. The story I am about to tell you is a true experience that happened to me more than 10 years ago, around 2009. At the time, I was just a high school student, about 15 or 16 years old, living with my family in a remote countryside area near the edge of National Park of Upper U Minh, in Kien Giang Province. Where I lived back then had no streetlights, and the houses were sparse, dilapidated, and scattered along the forest's edge, mostly old thatched huts built the traditional way. My family had lived there since my grandparents' youth, so I had grown up hearing all sorts of eerie and mysterious tales about this sacred, haunted forest. I was raised in a heavy atmosphere of folk ghost stories and warnings about sacred places, cursed hours, and spiritual taboos. My grandmother, a true southern woman of the old days, often told me all kinds of strange tales. From people being hidden by ghosts, led astray, to the restless souls of children who died young and now wandered the forest edge. Deep down, I believed it a little, but to be honest, because I had never seen anything with my own eyes, I had never truly felt afraid. I thought these were just stories adults used to scare kids. Until one sultry summer afternoon in 2009, when everything was still as normal as any other day, a casual comment from Uncle Ba, our neighbor who lived just a few houses down, completely changed the course of my afternoon. I remember it was around 4:30 or nearly 5 p.m. The sun was still out but had begun to soften. Uncle Ba came over, smoking a cigarette, and casually shared that the day before he had gone into National Park of Upper U Minh, followed some small canals inside, and caught a whole sack of giant apple snails and mud snails, which he sold at the market for quite a bit of money. He laughed and joked, "If you're free, go pick some yourself. The snails are everywhere and nobody's catching them." Hearing that he made money from selling snails got me excited. At the time, I had been wanting to earn some money to buy books and school supplies for the new school year. So I ran inside the house and eagerly gathered my gear, my headlamp, an old plastic bucket, and a large burlap sack to carry more. When my grandmother and my mother saw me hurrying about, they asked, "Where are you going, son?" I told them what Uncle Ba had just said and explained that I planned to go into the forest to catch snails and sell them for money. Surprisingly, neither my grandmother nor my mother stopped me. Instead, they just gave me some anxious advice. "Alright, go then, but only stay near the edge, don't foolishly go deep into the forest. And it's getting late, so be quick and come home early." I nodded eagerly, saying, "Yes, yes," then grabbed the bucket and sack, strapped on the headlamp, and set off. It was about 5 p.m. And the sky was still bright enough to see, so I didn't turn on my headlamp yet. It only took about 10 minutes of walking to reach the forest's edge. The air inside the forest was cool and gentle, with a light breeze rustling through the leaves. Occasionally, I could hear strange bird calls echoing from somewhere far away, making the scene feel both peaceful and eerily quiet. At first, I only searched along the forest edge. There were some snails, but not many, and they were quite small. Greedy for more, I gradually ventured deeper into the woods, not noticing how quickly the forest was darkening. The thick canopy above blocked out the fading daylight, and it felt like the forest was swallowing the evening whole. I had to turn on my headlamp to see and continued collecting snails. But the deeper I went, the luckier I got in a strangely uncanny way. There were snails everywhere, fat, shiny-shelled apple snails and mud snails. In some places, all I had to do was bend down and scoop up a handful. I was thrilled, as if I had struck gold, working non-stop, collecting while mentally calculating how much money I could earn. I completely forgot my mother's warning, and the time. It wasn't until I felt something odd that I snapped back to reality. I looked up and was startled to realize that the forest had grown pitch black. My headlamp was now the only light source in the thick, gloomy woods. My heart started pounding. I looked at the heavy bucket and sack full of snails, feeling both proud and nervous. I thought to myself, damn. It's way too late. Mom's probably worried. And this forest at night, what if something bad happens? I quickly grabbed the bucket, dragged the sack of snails behind me, and tried to follow the same path I had taken in. As I was hurrying forward with my head down, suddenly, clear as day, as if someone were standing right behind me, a deep, raspy voice called out. "Hey, you!" I froze on the spot, heart pounding. Terrified, I spun around immediately to see who was calling me, but there was no one there. In front of me was only the dark forest and a hazy mist creeping through the foliage. Not a single person. Not a sound. I muttered to myself. What? I could have sworn I heard someone. Was I just imagining things? Trying to calm myself down, I walked faster, an uneasy feeling creeping into my chest. But just a few minutes later, before I had made it very far, that same voice rang out again, even clearer this time, right next to my ear. "Hey, you! Where do you think you're going?" This time, I knew I hadn't misheard. The voice wasn't familiar. It was too close, so close I could feel someone's breath against the back of my neck. I whipped around in panic, my whole body freezing up, legs trembling. But once again, there was no one behind me. It felt like something invisible was following me in the dark depths of the forest. A chill crawled up from my feet to the back of my neck. I didn't dare stand still any longer. Gritting my teeth, I dragged the heavy sack and bucket, and ran as fast as I could in the direction I hoped was the way out, heart pounding, praying I wouldn't get lost in this forest tonight. But just as I'd taken a few more steps deeper into the forest, the voice rang out again. This time, it didn't come from behind me. Terrifyingly, it came from directly in front of me, and the tone was no longer just questioning, it was angry, aggressive. "Hey, you! Why didn't you answer me when I called?" At that moment, it was like I was struck by an invisible bolt of lightning. My whole body stiffened. My legs felt rooted to the ground, completely immobile. I tried to move, but nothing worked. My hands turned ice cold, my heart beat like a war drum, and my throat closed up, unable to produce a sound. Panic surged through me as I thought. Who is that? Who's talking? Why does that voice sound so terrifying? My headlamp flickered as I shakily aimed it forward, and in that dim, trembling light, I saw a figure. A blurry shape emerged among the dense trees, about 20 or 30 meters ahead. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but as they adjusted to the dim light, I froze in terror. That was not a normal person. The figure was freakishly tall, easily over 2 meters. But what truly horrified me was that the figure wasn't walking. It was gliding. Yes, gliding silently like smoke, not making a sound, not touching the ground. Under the beam of my headlamp, I could clearly see its feet hovering, floating just above the earth. I stood frozen, my body as cold as ice, eyes wide in horror as I watched the thing drift closer. And then, as the figure drew nearer, I realized, it was a woman. Or more accurately, a female spirit with a grotesque form. Her hair was wild and tangled, hanging long and covering half her face. It looked wet, as if she had just crawled out of a swamp, thick with mud, dead leaves, and cobwebs. She wore a traditional dark brown baba shirt, Vietnamese silk ensemble, smeared with dirt and sludge, like a corpse freshly risen from its grave. When she got within 10 meters of me, she suddenly lifted her head, revealing a ghostly pale face, completely drained of color, the face of a dead woman. She spoke in a shrill, chilling voice that pierced the soul. "Hey, you! Why didn't you answer me? What are you doing here? Or, do you want to come with me, be my friend?" With that, she burst into a shrieking, twisted laugh, a hideous, echoing cackle that sounded like it came straight from the underworld. I could hear it ringing in layers, sharp and shrill, like dozens of mouths laughing at once. The sound bored into my ears, driving me mad. I tried to turn and run, but my body was frozen stiff. Every muscle in me was locked like ice. She continued floating closer, muttering under her breath, her voice now turning deep and hollow, as if echoing from the bottom of a grave. "Tonight. I will take you. I will drag you down, to serve me below." I wanted to scream, but it felt like invisible hands were choking the sound in my throat. When she was just a few meters away, I could clearly see her entire face. It was as pale as candle wax, completely lifeless. Her eyes bulged out unnaturally, glaring at me with terrifying intensity, each eye as large as a rice bowl, with no pupils, only milky white. Her mouth stretched unnaturally wide, nearly to her ears, revealing jagged, sparse teeth, each long and sharp like a saw blade. She stood there, laughing that same inhuman laughter. The air around me had turned freezing cold. Wind howled all around, even though the forest had been still just moments before. It felt like I had stepped into the realm of the dead. In that moment of absolute terror, as my mind spiraled, I suddenly remembered something my grandmother had told me when I was little. If you see a ghost, do not look into its eyes. Close your eyes and chant Buddha's name. The Buddha will protect you. Without another thought, I shut my eyes tight, brought my shaking hands together in prayer, and began mumbling. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Please save me, save me. I chanted the Buddha's name over and over in desperation. At first, it was a whisper. Then, it became a frantic repetition inside my mind, faster and faster, like I feared I would be swallowed whole if I stopped even for a second. And then, as if by some miracle, I felt my body begin to lighten. My knees were trembling, but I could move again. Slowly, I cracked my eyes open, still chanting quietly while scanning my surroundings. She was gone. No more wind. No more hideous laughter. No more bone-chilling voices. Only the dark forest. Silent, heavy, but once again familiar. Without wasting a single second, I threw away the bucket and the sack of snails and ran like hell. I didn't care about anything anymore. One single thought ran through my mind: run. Run as fast as you can. I dashed through the dark forest, stepping on sharp thorns, stumbling and falling multiple times, but I never stopped. Sweat poured down my body like rain. My mouth was parched. My knees shook, but my legs kept going. When I finally saw the dim glow of the oil lamp from my house in the distance, I almost collapsed. I dragged myself into the yard, covered in mud, clothes torn to shreds. My father was already asleep, but my mother and grandmother were still awake, sitting by the embering charcoal stove. When they saw me, both of them panicked. Heavens! Why are you only just getting home? What happened to your face? It's pale as a sheet. You look like you've seen a ghost. I couldn't say a single word. My body trembled, eyes filled with tears. I ran straight to the bed, threw the blanket over myself, curled into a ball, and even then, I could still hear the ghostly laughter echoing inside my head. My grandmother and mother kept asking me questions, but I could not open my mouth. I was shaking, gasping for breath, just wanting to forget everything. After a while, seeing I wasn't responding, my grandmother quietly told my mother, "Let him rest. We'll deal with it in the morning. This must be something serious." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her again, that woman with tangled hair, bulging eyes, jagged teeth, and a voice that haunted the soul. I tossed and turned all night, curled up like a frightened child. It wasn't until near dawn, after I was completely drained from terror, that I finally drifted off for a short while. The next morning, when I woke up, I sat up hugging my pillow, still trembling, and began to tell my family everything that had happened to me in the forest. When I finally calmed down enough to share the whole story, everyone in my family was stunned. As I described the unnaturally tall woman, I shivered again, haunted by the memory of how she floated silently through the woods, her wild hair, her soiled clothes, and especially that dark brown ba outfit, stained with mud, like she had just crawled out of the grave. Hearing this, my father furrowed his brow, turned to my grandmother, and asked in a low, hesitant voice. "Mom, doesn't that sound exactly like Mrs. Lu Sum?" My grandmother let out a long, heavy sigh, then slowly nodded. "Yes, that's her. That's Lu Sum, all right. Oh heavens, why did she come back to scare the boy?" My mother, being an in-law who came into the family later, and unfamiliar with old stories, looked confused and asked, "Who's Lu Sum, Mom?" And then, in the air still thick with the chill of last night's horror, my grandmother began to recount a sorrowful, painful, and haunting tale from nearly 20 years ago, tied to the name, Lu Sum. She said that around 1989 or 1990, this region was still extremely wild. Dense forests towered over the land, tall grass grew as high as your head, and the roads were nothing but red dirt or slippery mud paths. When it rained, people would fall several times just trying to walk. Only the poorest of the poor, those with nowhere else to go, dared to settle near U Minh Forest, building makeshift huts to get by. Lu Sum's family was one of them. There were only 3 people in her household, her husband, and their son, a boy around 14 or 15. They lived in a rickety little thatch hut, about 2 kilometers from our house, also near the forest's edge. Their life was already steeped in poverty, but the real tragedy came from her husband's nature, Mr. Lu Kong. He was a chronic drunk. Almost every day, he drank rice wine, homebrew, anything, and when he got drunk, he always exploded. He would yell, smash things, curse violently. He not only refused to work but also routinely beat his wife and son, day or night. Whenever he drank, the house turned upside down, dishes broken, his wife crying, his son sobbing in fear. According to my grandmother, Mrs. Lu Sum was a kind, hard-working woman. But even patience has its limits. She endured for years, taking one beating after another. Her sadness and suffering piled up, year after year. Back then, no one knew what depression was, but looking back now, my grandmother was certain that's what Lu Sum had. No one noticed. She became a shadow of herself, quiet, withdrawn, never confiding in anyone. Until one fateful night. That day, after a drunken, rage-filled binge, Mr. Lu Kong returned home and once again unleashed his violence. This time, he beat Lu Sum so badly, her body was covered in bruises. After he passed out in a drunken stupor, Lu Sum, the woman who had silently endured years of abuse, quietly took a bottle of pesticide, walked deep into the heart of U Minh Forest, the darkest, most desolate place she knew, and chose to end her life. The next morning, when Lu Kong sobered up, he realized his wife was no longer in the house. He asked his son, who said she had gone out the night before without saying anything. At first, Lu Kong just grumbled a few curses, but as time passed and she didn't return, panic set in. He finally asked the neighbors and some drinking buddies to help search. It wasn't until noon that they found Lu Sum's lifeless body collapsed in a patch of dense reeds deep in the forest. The air around her still reeked of poison. Her death broke the hearts of the entire hamlet. People mourned her quietly, helplessly. According to my grandmother, the villagers helped Lu Kong arrange the funeral, then kept silent. But that silence didn't last long. Just 6 months later, strange rumors began to spread in the village. Some said they saw a woman gliding silently through the woods while setting fishing lines. Others claimed to hear voices calling from the trees. Many were so terrified, they fainted on the spot. The one who suffered the most was Mr. Lu Kong himself. He reportedly saw his wife standing at the foot of his bed, night after night, heard her moaning and whispering his name in the dead of night. There were nights when he would scream, "I know I was wrong. Please, forgive me." He became gaunt and paranoid, his mind and body deteriorating. In the end, he couldn't bear it anymore. Lu Kong took his children and vanished without a trace, leaving his wife's grave abandoned and unvisited. No one ever heard from them again. People thought the story would end there. But it didn't. Even after Lu Kong left, Lu Sum didn't stop. People in the village continued to be haunted by her spirit, some more than others. Eventually, the villagers pooled their money and organized a large ritual at the edge of the forest. They lit incense, prepared offerings, and together, they prayed. Lu Sum, we know you suffered in life. But now that you've passed, please move on. We're all poor people here, only going into the forest to find food. None of us meant any harm. Please, stop scaring us. My grandmother said they had to perform the ceremony multiple times. Each time they prayed, many in the village cried. And eventually, it seemed Lu Sum's spirit found peace. From around 1991 onward, no one was haunted anymore. The forest returned to its usual stillness. But among the locals, a warning remained. Don't speak loudly in the forest. Don't joke around. And above all, never say Lu Sum's name. That's why my entire family was confused as to why she reappeared in 2009, to haunt me. But my grandmother was certain, based on what I described, her height, her clothes, her voice, the way she floated, that what I had encountered was none other than Lu Sum. With a stern, serious tone I had never heard from her before, she warned me. From now on, you must never set foot in that forest again. Maybe your age matches hers. That's why she came to you. This time she just scared you, but next time, you may never come back, my child. I could only nod repeatedly, my face still pale, my heart still pounding. But even then, the story didn't end there. The next night, I developed a fever. At first, it was mild, but then it shot up so high I started hallucinating. For 5 or 6 days, the fever wouldn't break, no matter how much medicine I took. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lu Sum's face, grinning, with those bulging eyes and jagged teeth. Seeing this, my grandmother told my mother. This isn't just a normal illness. She prepared a simple offering with her own hands, lit 3 sticks of incense, and stood in the middle of the yard to pray. Lu Sum, the boy is just a child. He didn't know. Please let him go. Let him recover. Please don't follow him anymore. And strangely enough, that very day, after the ritual ended, I slept a long, peaceful sleep. When I woke up, the fever was gone. My body felt light, as if I had never been sick at all. From that moment on, no more nightmares. No more cold sweats. No more trembling in fear. And the following year, in 2010, my family moved away from the village, starting a new life in Benjung. Since then, I've never returned to that place. But the memory of that night, the face of Lu Sum, will forever be etched in my mind, for the rest of my life. Story number 2, a former soldier stays over at a haunted house. I was a soldier who was discharged right after 1975. The day I left the army, all I wanted was to return to SOC Trang and hold my mother in my arms after so many years away. No hardship in the army could break me, but the longing for home, hearing my mother call, and smelling the smoke from her kitchen never left me. That afternoon, I boarded the last passenger boat from Saigon to my hometown. Back then, roads were terrible and transportation scarce. When I arrived at the landing point, there was no motorbike, no cyclo to take me home. My house lay deep in the village, where even small carts couldn't reach. Despite the late hour, I decided to walk the rest of the way, my heart set on reunions and a warm family meal. I bought a plain baguette along the way to keep me going, the kind that's dry as a brick, but enough for a young man like me. I remembered that route clearly. First passing rice fields, then a few thatched houses of relatives, and then a little farther, home. But strangely, the farther I walked, the more unfamiliar everything became. Houses were gone, replaced by tall, thick reeds, a silent sea of grass. No people. No barking dogs. No faint glow of oil lamps. I told myself, maybe everyone's moved away, but as night fell quickly and darkness swallowed the path, fear crept in. I had walked for hours. My body ached, my stomach growled. My watch read nearly midnight. A cold wind slithered through the swamp grass. Could I have taken the wrong path? I stopped and looked back, but behind me was only an impenetrable night. Panic edged in. My plan to rest under some bush felt hopeless. I didn't even know where I was anymore. Then, a flickering light appeared in the distance. Hope flared within me as I ran toward it. I found a small, thatched house with mud walls and a rusty tin roof. Standing before its front door, I called out. "Excuse me. Is anyone home? I got lost, may I stay the night?" Moments later, a trembling female voice responded from within. Yes, wait a moment, I'll open." The door creaked open to reveal an old woman with snow-white hair and leathery skin like dried rice paper. She stared at me for a long moment, then kindly asked why I was wandering so late. I told her honestly I was a veteran returned from the war, lost my way home. She nodded with understanding and invited me in. Inside, there was an old bamboo bed and a worn hammock. Feeling uneasy, I offered. "Please, if you prefer to rest in the hammock, I can take the bed." But with a wave of her hand she replied. "No. You're young. Rest well on the bed. I, old as I am, can sleep in the hammock." She was so gracious that I felt reluctant to refuse. She even draped a mosquito net for me as thoughtfully as if I were her grandson. I lay down, but hunger gnawed at me. I couldn't sleep. In my stomach, pain and hunger battled as I shifted restlessly under the net. It seemed the old woman noticed, because she gently asked. "Are you hungry? I'll fry some rice for you." I tried to decline politely. "No, thank you. I can wait until morning." Yet my hunger persisted. A while later, I heard soft footsteps and the faint sound of oil sizzling. I thought to myself, how kind of her. The smell of cooking rice wafted through the house, so tempting. Yet oddly, it took far too long. Curiosity overcame me. I quietly slipped out from under the net to peek. And then, my heart froze. In the dim firelight, the old woman bent over a pan, but she wasn't using chopsticks. Instead, an impossibly long, red tongue writhed around the rice, stirring it like a snake. Its texture was slick and unnatural. I pulled the net over my head and lay frozen, pretending to be asleep. My body trembled. "Ma," I thought. "I'm facing a ghost." But I didn't scream. No sudden movements. The woman returned upstairs, placed a plate of fried rice on the table, and sweetly said, "I've fried rice for you, if you're hungry, come eat." I held my breath, and she called again a few times before stopping. I peeked out. She sat on the porch, facing away, back turned toward me. I thought the ordeal was over, until what happened next nearly made me vomit. She started picking lice off her own scalp, one by one, placing each in her mouth with a chomp, then chewing and swallowing. Again and again. Then, without warning, she ripped a patch of scalp and hair from her head, setting it across her lap, and continued picking with her bare fingers. I stifled a scream. I knew at that moment I needed to escape, before she came for me in the dead of night. Slowly, I sat up, grabbed my pack, and crept toward the door. Just as I reached it, she turned her head slightly, and her eyes, they were not human. Fear gave me strength. I kicked hard, sending her sprawling aside, then bolted out into the darkness. I ran blindly, hearing her scream behind me. "Where are you going? I haven't eaten you yet. Stop." When I dared to look back, she floated just above the ground, hair flowing, mouth gaping in horror. I screamed and dove into a dense patch of mulberry bushes before collapsing. When I came to, dawn was breaking. I lay in someone's home, disoriented. The homeowner told me the villagers found me collapsed in the mulberry grove, covered in mud and trembling like a ghost myself. As I recovered, I told them the whole story. They turned pale and said, "That place had no house, only an abandoned hut, once home to an old woman who died many years ago. They say her spirit haunts that path, people passing by are always chased off, some even vanished." Shivering, I learned I had taken a wrong turn. If I'd followed the road on higher ground, I would have reached the village. But I wandered into a side path that led to the haunted area, and only survived because I ran through a mulberry patch, which the legends say ghosts avoid. Eventually, I recovered, ate, rested, then found my way home. When I finally entered our courtyard, I threw myself into my mother's arms and wept like a child. That night left an imprint on me forever. I never again traveled alone at night, not in city streets, and certainly not through remote swamps, where the border between man and spirit is thin as morning mist. The third story, a ghost encounter during the flood season. Back then, I was still young, full of energy, and known throughout the village for being bold and reckless. The Mekong Delta was still wild in those days, with a web of rivers and canals. At night, it was dead silent, but I had never known fear. The locals often gossiped about wandering female ghosts or white figures gliding across the waterways, yet I still rowed my boat out alone to fish or harvest water lilies, never needing company. That night was no different. I paddled out a few kilometers from home to a canal known for being quiet and full of fish, but also for its strange happenings. I just thought, if ghosts can live underwater, how could there be fish left for me to catch? After setting more than a dozen fishing rods, I decided to lie down on the boat for a quick nap, planning to check the lines around midnight. The night breeze was cool, the water gurgled gently, and I drifted off under the pale moonlight. Until suddenly, one of the rods up front jerked hard like something big had taken the bait. I sat up immediately and rowed over. Jackpot, I thought. But as I reeled in the line, something felt off. It was heavy, but didn't thrash like a fish. The moment I pulled it up, I froze. Dear God, it wasn't a fish at the end of the line. It was a human head. Soaking wet, hair clinging in strings, water dripping steadily onto the boat. Its eyes were wide open, rolled upward, staring straight at me. Its mouth slightly agape like it was about to speak. The skin was pale, like a bloated corpse. I swear, anyone with a weaker heart would have fallen straight into the river. But I wasn't just anyone. I knew right away, it was a ghost. Just playing tricks. It didn't want to harm me. So I didn't scream, didn't panic. I calmly unhooked the head, dropped it into the fish bucket on the boat, and went on checking the rest of my lines like nothing had happened. Early the next morning, as the sky turned light, I opened the bucket, the head was gone. Only a few snakeheads were left, still gasping. I chuckled to myself, muttering, whatever that was sure had a lot of free time. Another time, also at night, I was out gathering water lilies. The river was dead still, with only the sound of fish splashing and frogs croaking from the banks. Around 7 p.m., while I was crouched on the boat, I heard someone calling from the shore. "Uncle! Uncle, may I catch a ride with you?" I looked up. There stood a young woman in a flowing white dye, long hair down to her waist, a round face, pale and lovely like a porcelain doll. She looked like a rich girl from the city, but why was she standing alone in such a deserted spot? I asked. "Where are you going, standing here this late?" She replied softly. "I lost my way. My house is just at the head of the canal. May I ride with you?" I looked around. Not a soul. Figured she had visited someone and stayed too late. Feeling sorry for her, I paddled over. She stepped onto the boat gently, without so much as a ripple in the water. I didn't think too much of it at the time. She sat silently in the back. I tried to make small talk, but she only nodded or shook her head, her face always down. To mark my way back, I broke a few branches along the canal edge as we passed. After a while, she pointed ahead and said, "There's my house, Uncle. Please pull over." I looked up. What I saw shocked me. In front of us was a brightly lit row of houses, 2 or 3 stories tall, side by side like a city block. I had lived here my whole life and had never seen anything like that. She stepped onto the bank and told me to wait. A moment later, she returned, her audi full of ripe guavas. "Thank you, Uncle. Here's something for your trouble," she said, and emptied them all into my boat. I thanked her and paddled off to continue harvesting lilies. But something didn't sit right in my stomach. The next morning, still uneasy, I decided to row back, following the broken branches I had left as markers. When I arrived at the exact same spot, I almost dropped my paddle. Where there had been a row of glowing houses the night before was now a field of wild overgrown grass, tall reeds waving in the wind, completely deserted. I pulled the boat ashore and parted the grass, and what I saw made my spine go cold. It was an old cemetery. About 20 small, moss-covered graves, worn down by time. Some headstones were cracked and crumbling. I stood frozen. So, the girl I gave a ride to last night was a ghost? I said nothing. Just quietly rowed my boat home. From that night on, I still went out to fish, still gathered lilies, but I always brought a mulberry branch with me on the boat. One time, I even joked with my buddies. Ghosts? Yeah, they're out there. But if they're just playing harmless pranks like that, then, let them be. As long as we live right and keep our hearts clean, even spirits will show respect.
Final story, possessed after a simple hospital visit. My name is Nguyen Tiut. I never married, never had children, and I live alone in a small house by the riverside. I spend my days growing vegetables, raising fish, and helping people however I can. I have a gift. Since I was young, I could see things others couldn't. I often dreamed of wandering spirits asking me for help. Over time, word got around in the village. People who fell ill with no clear cause, or experienced strange phenomena, would come to see me. I never charged a single cent. If someone brought fruit or incense, that was fine. If not, I helped anyway, doing it all for merit. One day, a man brought his elderly mother to my home. I recognized her. She lived about 7 or 8 kilometers away. The moment she stepped through my door, I could tell something wasn't right. Her eyes were darting all over the place, and she kept mumbling. "Wow, this place is beautiful. I might just stay here forever." The son explained that just the day before, his mother had gone to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor said it was just a mild fever and prescribed her some medicine. But as soon as they got home, her behavior changed drastically. She started yelling, throwing things around the house, and screaming bizarre things like, "I'm not your mother." Suspecting spiritual possession, the son hired a private ambulance to rush her over to my place for help. I had her sit in the middle of my living room while I quietly lit incense, poured 3 cups of water, and placed a dish of salt and rice in front of her. Then I prayed silently, hoping to open communication with the spirit inside. When I was done, I looked her straight in the eye and asked, "May I ask, where are you from, and why did you enter this woman's body and cause such chaos?" The old woman, or rather, the spirit inside her, glared at me and replied coldly, "I came from the hospital. This woman happened to lie on the same bed where I died. I felt a connection and decided to follow her. And her kids? They're annoying." I stayed calm and tried to reason with it. "Come on now, let go. Everyone in life has their own burdens. They didn't do anything to deserve your hatred, did they?" The spirit's tone suddenly grew harsh. "Who do you think you are, trying to preach to me? You can't do anything to me. I've been dead a long time, I'm not scared of anyone." Before I could respond, the spirit snatched up the dish of salt and rice in front of it and spun it hard. What happened next made everyone freeze in terror. The dish shot up toward the ceiling, spinning like a top before shattering in midair. Salt and rice flew everywhere across the room, as if someone had hurled it with force. That was when I knew this wasn't just a mild case. I stood up and said firmly, "So you won't leave peacefully, huh? Then don't blame me for using stronger methods." I went to the altar and took down an old fountain pen, an heirloom passed down from my great-grandfather. It wasn't a magical talisman, but it bore the carved image of a yin-yang symbol and held strong ancestral energy. I only used it in urgent cases. I approached the possessed woman and tapped the pen lightly 3 times on her forehead, chanting, "Heaven, earth, human in harmony, be gone now." Immediately, the spirit screamed, "Ow! That hurts. What are you doing?" I didn't flinch. "Leaving or not? If not, I'll keep tapping all night." Reluctantly, the spirit gave in. Fine, I'll leave. You're too fierce. I'll hitch a ride back with that ambulance driver." As soon as the words left its mouth, the old woman's body trembled and collapsed backward. Her family rushed to catch her while I silently prayed again, guiding the spirit away from the house. When the woman woke up, she had no memory of anything. I knew then it was just a wandering soul. Not very powerful, but very temperamental. I later instructed the family on how to make offerings and pray for its peaceful departure so it wouldn't return. And let me tell you, thank goodness that ambulance driver stayed outside the house. If he had heard that spirit say, "I'm hitching a ride back with him," I swear he would have driven off and never come back.